Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Line-Miller, your host, and I want to thank our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They are creating tomorrow's food business ecosystem today. You can find out more at farmtoplate.io. And thanks for being with us today for a really exciting podcast interview. I cannot wait to jump in. We have Karen Christensen with us. She is the Senior Vice President of Merchandising with Whole Foods. Welcome to the podcast, Karen.
Well, good morning. It's nice to be here.
We are so excited to have you. And I have to say, your title really doesn't describe all that you do. If you could share with us really what that merchandising title covers at Whole Foods.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just give you a really short explanation of my background, which is that I started working in the natural food industry right after college and came over to Whole Foods way back in 1998 after working for an all-organic produce wholesaler for a number of years. And I've been with Whole Foods now for 25 years. So during that time, I've done quite a few different things. I've played a number of different roles, a lot of it with a heavy emphasis in the produce space. And today, my title is Senior Vice President of Merchandising, and the particular areas that I'm leading are perishable merchandising. So for us, that is produce, meat, and seafood. I also lead our quality standards team. That's the team that develops our industry-leading quality standards. And in the past year, also brought on a new sustainability team. So that's what sort of falls under that umbrella of SVP of merchandising.
Yeah, those are really some key areas for Whole Foods. I mean, and your background in natural foods, and now, of course, your longevity with Whole Foods says a lot about the company and how you're resonating with them and what their missions are. Whole Foods is a household name. We know about it. We hear about it. I don't know that everyone knows really what the mission of Whole Foods is. What are they? What are you trying to do out there in the marketplace and succeeding very well, I might say?
Yeah, the purpose that drives our day to day is to nourish people and the planet. So that is our sort of that's our soundbite that really encapsulates, many decades worth of exciting work. I also think it's a very accurate reflection of how we approach our work in the day to day, which is nourish people and the planet.
Yeah, and that's so exciting because you are really focused on the whole natural foods. Now, in particular, I know this new area of sustainability. I kind of want to dive into that a little bit because that is a place where you are excelling. You're already set up to do well there, but you're working in some areas there that we'd love to hear about.
Yeah, well, what I'd love to talk to you today about is our vision to champion an ethical and regenerative food system. When we look at our history at Whole Foods and our ability to scale organic agriculture across the U.S. and ultimately, I think, have an impact on the world, the work that we've done, we have a program called Sourced for Good, of which we're very proud. In those cases, I think they've given us an amazing blueprint for us to now take the next step, which is to champion regenerative agriculture here in the U.S. and around the world. So very excited in particular to be talking about that today.
Well, and let's kind of define that term for our audience, because regenerative agriculture, I think, I'm not sure everyone knows what that is. In the Whole Foods world, you're focused on that. Help us define it.
The way that we've defined regenerative agriculture at Whole Foods is regenerative agriculture describes holistic farming and grazing practices that improve soil health and sequester carbon, right? And ultimately build soil fertility, and we believe have a positive impact on the climate.
Okay. Well, that's a huge definition. And all that falls under the sustainability piece as well, because you're
Indeed.
trying to set things up for future success with our food. I mean, that's what we're all trying to do, right? Be able to feed the planet in a healthy way, obviously.
Agree.
You talk about the bountiful food system as well. Just share a little bit about that, because it's
Share about what do I mean when I say a bountiful food system?
Yes. What?
I think it ties really well to the talking points about regenerative agriculture, right? The intention there is to bring back fertility in our soils so that we are building topsoil versus losing topsoil in preparation for future generations that will be dependent on that topsoil to produce their food. So when I think about what does it mean to be bountiful, it really is about having this robust, living soil that is producing nutritious, healthy food here in the US and ultimately everywhere in the world.
And so this program that you've got that's really addressing or working with the regenerative agriculture and sustainability piece, the Source for Good program. Do you have an example of that we might be able to understand, where this is applying or how you're executing?
Sure. We have many examples in the Source for Good program, which is a program that dates all the way back to 2008. We originally called that program the Whole Trade Guarantee. And over time, we sought to expand the program to have a little bit of a broader umbrella and also be something that for consumers was a little easier to understand. So in the case of Source for Good, the pillars of the program are that it cares for farm workers in the supply chain, provides good livelihood for people doing the production, as well as has environmental benefits. And so I would say it in some ways goes above and beyond what we ask for under our regenerative umbrella, but definitely has regenerative components. So an example would be we work with Dole Pineapple down in Costa Rica. And they have a fair trade certified pineapple program that we sell under our Sourced for Good. And part of that program, under that certification, they're actually preserving adjacent wild land and measuring the impacts to biodiversity and then showing incremental and continuous improvement in the biodiversity that's immediately adjacent to the areas where they're doing their farming. So I think that would be a good example. It's an early example, right? We believe that there's a positive impact on carbon sequestration. We know, and we can validate there's a positive impact on biodiversity. We believe it has a positive impact on like the watershed, on the people that live in that environment. So that would be an example of, an early project. Like this, again, dates back 10 or 12 years. But that really fits the principles that we want to carry forward and use to sort of model and inspire what we can do in this space.
Exactly. And a lot of the results of the steps you're taking now in these areas, we're not going to be able to see them necessarily tomorrow, next month, next year, maybe in 10 years. But your whole concept of setting things up for generations to come, this fits.
Yeah, we believe so. I think there's an element, I am a retailer, I am not a scientist. However, I do believe that you can apply a very common sense principle, right? With like a clean production, clean soil, clean water, clean air, all of that's better for people, all of that's better for the planet. And, that's how we're going to be able to produce, a higher volume of food moving forward.
Right. And you're also working to scale organic agriculture here in the United States, which is where we are for our worldwide listeners. We're here in the United States, North America. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. So this takes me back to my youth, right? Coming out of college, I was looking for a type of work that would inspire and engage me. And I found myself working for a very small company in San Francisco that specialized in wholesaling organic produce. I had no intention of getting into the food business as my career, but I was really inspired and galvanized by the work that they were doing and to learn about what folks are working on in agriculture, right, that has a positive environmental impact. So that's really where I got hooked, was in this organic produce business. And then as I got a little bit older, I started thinking about, wow, how could we make this more accessible across a much broader population? And that's where, for me, Whole Foods came into the picture, right? Whole Foods came to California. I got to know some people there through that. And then, it seemed very obvious to me back in 1998, well, this is the opportunity, right, to scale this concept across the United States. And we have seen, like I think back in the 90s, maybe it was a little bit of it was much more of a niche or a fringe kind of market. But now you can find organic produce everywhere in this country, right? It's table stakes for any retailer that you have an organic program. And that's something I'm very excited about. I continue to be excited about. I'm very proud of the contribution that Whole Foods has made to lead the way in that regard.
Oh yeah, market leader, hands down, on the forefront of a lot of these initiatives. But you're just not talking about the produce area because you're over meat and seafood as well. We could probably have a separate podcast on each of those.
You could, yeah, it's completely different topics, but yeah, equally interesting. There's so much going on in those spaces.
Yeah. Do you want to share a highlight or two possibly from those areas as well? Do you have something you'd like to about?
I think we have examples in both cases. In the case of meat, one of the places where Whole Foods has really led the way is to establish farm animal welfare standards for our meat department. Again, when we started that work a couple decades ago, I think it seemed very niche-y, very small. But today it's table stakes. Every retailer has awareness of farm animal welfare today in a way that's very different than it was 20 years ago. And that's another place I'm really proud of the work that Whole Foods has done in that space. Seafood, a very similar story, right? So 25 years ago, we started out working with the Marine Stewardship Council to measure the sustainability of our wild-caught seafood. Later got into a partnership with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and developed standards for aquaculture so that, for each portion of the seafood department that we're selling, every part of the seafood department that we're selling, we can say if it's wild, we have sustainability metrics in place. If it's farmed, right, we have very strict standards in place where we are completely transparent about how that production is done. So those are both, I think, really great examples, again, where a couple decades ago, that was uncommon. But today, every retailer has some aspect of that kind of program. And again, I think it is Whole Foods Market sort of leading the charge and showing what is possible that has changed the game.
Absolutely. I think, and a company of your size, being able to set the bar higher for maybe smaller companies and other companies that aren't exactly sure what the next right step to take is. You've been on the forefront of taking those right steps for a long time. And so hopefully you're a model for a lot of other smaller companies. Some of them may be listening to us right now. And I'm excited to be able to share about your initiatives because you're a market leader. And if we can just have some models out there like you of how to do the next right thing, even when it's not, maybe nobody's paying attention. I mean, now consumers care about animal welfare and sustainable seafood practices and organic produce. But when you started, like you said, maybe it was a little bit of a smaller intention, and now it's commonplace.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm super excited about is to see larger players come into the space. Whole Foods Market, although we have grown an incredible amount over the past 25, 30 years, still far from the largest player in the US food system. So it's also very exciting to us when we see some of the bigger players coming in and taking some of these ideas and helping scale.
Yeah. And that's really exciting because I feel like you've kind of shown how it can be done and others can take what you've learned and apply it even quicker than you did when you were doing that. Well, from a perspective of working at Whole Foods, you've been there a really long time and you've seen a lot go on, but I think a lot of your employees are team players. I mean, you have a lot of longevity in
We do.
your staff.
We do.
And there are reasons for that.
Yeah, there's so many reasons. One, I think that when we talk about our purpose being the purpose to nourish people and the planet, that permeates really every aspect of what we do. We also have a long history of being values driven and talking about that in a very inclusive way across every level of the company and creating opportunities at every level of the company to contribute. So I do think, I started here when I was relatively young, much younger than I am today. And throughout this 25-year journey, there's always been an opportunity for me to learn about something that interests me, to contribute towards this mission, and sort of to find the way that I can add value to this bigger picture point of view. And one of the things that I thought would be fun to talk about today is that, over time, I spent a lot of time in the sourcing space, a lot of time in the produce space, which afforded me many, many opportunities to go out and visit with suppliers around the world, stand up these programs like Sourced for Good. And over the past few years, we've really been thinking about hey, how do we inspire team members the way that I was inspired when I was young? And so one of the programs, we have a new CEO this year. His name is Jason Beekle. He's amazing and has so much energy and so much desire to sort of bring everybody into our mission and purpose. And one of the things he launched this year was a program called In the Field with Jason that's based on those historical sourcing trips that we have taken, whether it's in produce, meat, or seafood, or in other categories. But some of our the greatest hits of, just our most amazing and inspirational suppliers. And he stood up this program to take team members who are store-based. They're team members who are what we call certified culture champions. So they're team members who've gone through a course to be certified in understanding the history of Whole Foods Market, understanding our values and our principles and our purpose. Those folks can now apply to go on these trips. So we've done 3 so far this year, and it's been absolutely amazing to hear from team members who get to go out and, for instance, visit that Dole pineapple farm, right? See the adjacent nature preserve, talk to the folks who are working on that farm in those much improved conditions compared to anywhere else we've been. To see sort of the light bulbs go off and sort of that passion ignite in a new generation of team members, it just does not get better than that, right? When we think about building this for generations to come, it's also about, engaging the next generation who's working at Whole Foods around hey, this is real. There's something that you can do to be part of this really pretty incredible mission. So that's just sort of, I think it shows up when I start talking about that's what it's like working here. Right? We have so many opportunities to do things like that, to make choices around how we want to show up in our work, how we want to show up in the world. And that's why people stay working at Whole Foods for a long time.
And let's just be honest about the challenges that the food industry is having with staffing, particularly at the store level, and the more hourly type employee. I, first of all, feel the energy, the infectious energy from Jason. I want to go on the field with Jason too and get out there and see what Whole Foods is doing. I mean, if I were an employee, I certainly would be striving to put in the extra effort to become a culture champion and get that certification. What a great program. You're sharing your company and your mission and trying to get them, if they already weren't buying into it, to understand enough to buy into it, and then be able to apply for this awesome experience. It's a great way to create that culture and that team feel and maintain that and hopefully move forward. I mean, we don't want to, Whole Foods, you don't want to be replacing employees every month or 6 months, or, have some people that are really invested in what you're doing and understand it. And the feet on the ground is part of it.
Yes. Well, and I'll testify it does work, right? That we have many, many people who are deeply engaged, in this work and in, finding the ways to make their own contributions to it.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's not all about the money or the job. In a lot of ways, it's about the mission. So I think it's really important that Whole Foods is sharing theirs. and getting those people that want to buy into that mission involved. I do also want to say we're recording right at the very beginning of 2024. So the 3 trips that happened were in 2023, and who knows what this 2024 will hold by the time this podcast is released in a month or two. And then,
so true.
I'm sure with the momentum you've gained and the success that the first 3 programs provided, there are more in the planning stages.
Yeah, for sure. We have one coming up just at the end of the year, right at the end of 2023. We announced a new pollinator policy at Whole Foods, which is asking all of our producers in produce and floral to implement an integrated pest management system by 2025 and prohibiting particular pesticides in the production that's harmful for pollinators. And we'll start with potted plants in 2024. So super excited to make that announcement, and then to plan that in the field trip where we'll actually take team members to go visit some of the suppliers that are working with us on developing this program. So that's a good example where we would say, hey, we want to do something that's good for the environment. We believe that we can help drive this positive change in this part of our industry. Now we're going to share this story. We're going to share it externally. We're also going to share it internally, right? And we're going to bring our people to where they can see it in action, right? So they can take that home. They can talk about it with fellow team members. They can talk about it with customers. And, hopefully some of them get hooked and we get excited that they want to actually make a career, driving this kind of change.
Right. And another example of Whole Foods being a catalyst to show others what's possible. That's part of what I love about our conversation. Karen, you have shared insights in several different areas that you actually have your hands in and have been involved in. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience before we go today?
I guess the thing I'll close with is that, selling the highest quality natural and organic groceries is our number one core value. And we like to say that quality is a state of mind here at Whole Foods. And hopefully through this conversation, maybe I've given some insight into what we mean when we're talking about that, right? We believe these practices also produce the highest quality, most delicious, most nutritious foods available. But it's this deep work behind the scenes, right, that really brings it all together. Right. So it's more than just words on a wall for us that, we really, we love this work. We love what we do. And, we're excited to continue doing it.
Yeah. And thank you so much for letting our audience see a little bit of your behind the scenes to the quality products that you bring to the market for us to then show up and say, maybe not even appreciate as much as now I will, because I'm a Whole Foods shopper. When I go to the store, I'm going to say, oh, that's what she talked about. Look at that. The meat counter, the seafood counter. I'm going to be able to kind of personalize it a little bit. And I hope the same for our audience. And audience, if you enjoyed this interview with Karen Christensen and the insight into what Whole Foods is doing in the marketplace, please like this episode, share it with your friends. We would love to have your input on other episodes that you would like to hear, what topics you would like covered. Just engage with us. We're here to serve you. But thank you for being with us. And until next week, I'm Pam Linemiller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.